Audio on demand from Vision Christian Media.
You're listening to Momentum, a show that helps men succeed in life. And as we delve into this week's topic, a reminder that some of the content may be of a sensitive nature. Now, here's your hosts, Tim and Des.
Well, welcome to this week's Momentum. It is Tim and Des with you once again, and we appreciate you tuning in wherever you are around Australia. Hey, thanks so much for joining us for the next little while. The man we're going to be talking to again this week is one of my favorite speakers that we've spoken to on the show. Not denigrating anybody else, but he just brings such a perspective into this realm that we speak into, and it's Jonathan Doyle. Welcome back to Momentum, man. Thanks for coming back home.
Yeah, man.
Hey guys, it's great to be back to spend a bit more time with a couple of my favorite humans. I really appreciate the invitation, and as always, I hope we can just bring a little bit of insight and encouragement to men around the country and around the world. Sometimes, one of my favorite quotes, Tim, you've heard me say, is that you don't need a whole bunch of great ideas to change your life. You just need one good idea that you're actually prepared to use.
Yeah.
Hopefully, between the three of us, we'll come up with something useful for people.
Yeah, that's good. That's great to have you on board, John. That
sounded really terrible the way that came out. But what I meant was that I'm sure that the Holy Spirit will help the three of us bring what's needed. Absolutely. That's what I meant to say.
Right. Let's go with that. That sounds better. Look, Jonathan, you and I have known each other for a number of years, and we've talked on the radio before Momentum even came to be. And this was one of the topics that we tackled. But I mean, when you look at what's happening around the world today, this is a great topic, and when you and I talked about it, it was on your website back then. It was called "Character is King," and so I suppose we want to start today by talking about character. And I suppose there is that famous saying that character is who you are when nobody's watching. But I suppose when if you want to just put your own spin on that, how would you, to set up the show, define character to men listening right now?
Yeah, the first thing I'd say is years ago I was speaking at a leadership event, and the concept of character was pretty significant for what I was trying to impart, I guess, around leadership. So I did some research. I've always had an interest in etymology, sort of. When you're speaking on key topics, etymology is the study of where words come from, right? So character is interesting. It doesn't appear in the English language till sort of around about the 15th, 16th century.
Okay.
And the translation of it actually translates as what they call an indelible mark written on the soul, and it translates as like a tattoo.
Wow.
That character is so intrinsic that it's basically something we're writing on the essence of who we are. Now, it doesn't mean it's something you're born with. It means it's something that is created over time. And I guess throughout this discussion, we can talk about how that happens. Character is, as you make a good point, Tim, it's our world will be a somewhat different place if character, especially at the highest levels of leadership, was something we could all see probably a fair bit more of. I think there's a huge amount of expediency in our world at the moment, and there's deep roots to that too. I mean, you go back to Nietzsche writing in the 19th century, this idea that what really mattered was the will to power, that, what mattered was human will, that you just, you identified what you wanted, you went after it, and whatever the cost. And character is coming from a different place. So it's an indelible mark written on the soul. I guess my opening comments would be, in previous episodes, I've talked a lot about how classical thinking has shaped, what we think about this sort of stuff. So there's a very, very rich tradition, going back to people like Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, and Stoic philosophy. And then, of course, the Greeks like Aristotle particularly were writing extensively on the topic. So it's an issue that's been really important to humans for a very, very long time. But I think at this particular moment in history, it's rarely discussed. It's rarely talked about. I mean, you keep hearing this word about integrity all the time, integrity in politics, integrity this. I'll tell you the truth, after all these years and all this postgrad, I'm not even sure what that word actually means. I think it means something like you kind of do what you say and say what you do, but I think we need to be having a deeper conversation about what character really, really is.
So when do you think character starts to form? Is it when you sort of get to 20 and you become an adult and that sort of age? Or is it a lot before that?
Great question. these are the currents that shape our modern world, right? If you take a Freudian approach, you'd say that this sort of stuff is formed before the age of 2, and there's this profound sense of that we're shaped by childhood issues and trauma. That's really big at the moment. So, Des, to your question, how is it formed? I think we've got to be honest about the mystery of it for a start, because you get people that live through trauma, you get 2 people live through similar traumas, and then you get this, people can just take totally different responses, right?
Yeah, exactly.
God gives us free will, right? So, St. Augustine famously said that grace builds on nature. So we have this raw material that we're given, the families we come from, the situations that we have. And the great mystery is that some of us tend to take that raw material and make different sets of decisions. And again, we can agree that we live in a blame culture, right? Where lots of people can have similar experiences and then blame their lack of character and lack of success and lack of contribution on any other, other people in other situations. So there's some mystery here. For me, like, given the background that I came from, I just kind of had this innate sense that for a long time I just wanted to get even. I was just like, not at a particular person. I just wanted to get. I felt that I'd been dealt a pretty difficult hand, but I didn't want to let it break me.
Where do you think the link is between core values that we develop through circumstance, through influence, and our character? Because they are aligned, aren't they? They link.
Having done a master's in leadership, I always struggled with the concept of values, because what I came across in a lot of study over the years was that values can be quite transient, and they can be defined. They're often defined by wherever the power is sometimes. So is that whoever has the most significant power in a particular system can tend to define what the values will be. So values can be a function of whoever the particular person is, right? I eventually came from a much deeper place, which was the concept of virtues. So virtues predate the modern concept of values. So for classical thinking, again, virtues were something very different. The best definition of a virtue is an habitual disposition to do the good. So what the Greeks were coming at was firstly that good was something we could know. Yes. Now, again, we're all living in a moment where that statement itself is completely up for grabs, right? Like many moderns, postmoderns, would argue that we can know the good, but we come from a tradition, at least in the Western tradition, that you can know good and you can know evil. So a virtue was a habit of consistently doing what was good.
Yeah, I like that.
And so the classical ones were prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude. They're the classical 4 virtues. They call them the cardinal virtues because cardinal comes from the Latin cardinale, which means hinge. Yeah, it's like a door hinge. And if you didn't have these hinge virtues, you couldn't really live the fullness of your own life. So you had to be prudent. You had to be able to make the right decision for the right reason at the right time. So my son, who's 13, yesterday he was in trouble for something. And I said, mate, was this the right decision in the right place at the right time? And he's like, no. And so he knew that. So what I'm getting at is that character is shaped by our relationship with virtue, which is a conversation that's just dropped out of the modern world, right? Yes. So, prudence, to do the right thing for the right reason at the right time. Justice, to give to other people what is due to them because of what they are. So in our political context, if a political leader was virtuous, then they would think about legislation and policy in terms of how do I give to the citizens what is due to them because of what they are, made in the image of God, right? Temperance, the ability to moderate attitudes. And I know on this show, many guys, all of us at different times in life may have struggled with, different forms of addiction. So this idea of the virtue of temperance, that if you can't moderate an appetite, then eventually it's going to moderate you. And finally was fortitude, was courage. And they always thought courage was the most important one because you needed courage to do the other ones. You needed courage to do the right thing at the right time because it's not easy. It's much easier to do what's pleasurable in our modern world. So again, I've gone down the deep rabbit hole of classical thinking there, but
that's great.
I think these are the parts that are missing because it is easy to have a conversation about, integrity, whatever that actually means. So character and virtue, it's really, the idea is simply this, that we become what we repeatedly do.
Yeah.
So Aristotle was asked, how does the courageous man become courageous? The Greeks were interested in that. They were like, how does the guy become brave? Or how does the guy become gentle? Or how does the guy become thoughtful or compassionate or merciful? And it was so beautiful because Aristotle just, come back to the courageous man, he just said, well, it's simple. He said he does courageous things.
All around Australia, you're tuned into Momentum with Tim and Des, and our special guest this week is Jonathan Doyle. We're talking about character and why it is so important for us as men to develop a good character in every area of our lives. We're going to come back and finish this discussion with Jonathan Doyle in just a moment, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, just a quick reminder, our website, momentumaustralia.org, is packed full of things to help you on your journey to become a well-rounded, healthy, whole man. And there's all sorts of topics on there. There's podcasts of previous shows, some discussion elements as well, where you can throw some things in there, put your 2 cents worth in, glean from other people. We want to start discussions and help each other on this journey. Des and I don't profess to have it all together, which is why we have guests like Jonathan Doyle on the show to help us all out. If you'd want to check out the website, momentumaustralia.org. And we'll be back with this week's show in just a moment.
This is Momentum, a show that helps men succeed in life. Find out more at momentumaustralia.org.
If this program has highlighted something you'd like prayer for, we'd love to pray for you. Call 1-800-PRAY-FOR-ME. That's 1-800-772-936. It's a free call. Or text 0401 132 888.
You're listening to Momentum, a show that helps men succeed in life. Find out more at momentumaustralia.org.
Let's get back into this week's show. It is Momentum with Tim and Des, and we just want to take a quick moment to pause and say thank you to each of the 31 radio stations that are now taking Momentum all around Australia, and of course the national Christian broadcaster Vision FM for broadcasting Momentum right across their network. Really appreciate you guys doing that, and wherever you are tuning in across Australia, it is great to have you here. Hopefully you're getting something from the beginning of the show as we delve into part 2 with this week's special guest, Jonathan Doyle.
It's good to talk about character, and I mean, I guess if you asked all the men who are listening to the show, would you like to have better character? They would say, yeah, of course I would. But the question is, what are the stumbling blocks? What are the things is it pride? What are the things that stop us from developing stronger character?
Yeah, great question. We live in an extremely fragmented, busy, chaotic world. So, most of the men listening to this would agree that we don't tend to sit around for long periods of time thinking about character, right? We're just getting up every day. Right. So the first thing is that we need to be deliberate about this thing. So for what it's worth, I spend probably an hour to an hour and a half a day praying through this stuff and basically making time to pray and think. And what I can encourage people with is over years now, I am changing a little bit, definitely not perfect, but I've been surprised at the changes, especially what I came from. So the first thing is, why don't we do it? Because we're not deliberate about it. We don't think about it and we're busy. The second thing is that we live in a highly pleasure-oriented culture. So ease, pleasure, consumption are ubiquitous. They're available all times and everywhere, right? So for guys struggling with stuff, just about everybody's got a phone these days. I don't know where mine is, probably burned it. So the levels of temptation, distraction are pretty strong. So we need to think about those things. Like we need to think about the things in our life that are particularly difficult and distracting for us and not leading us any closer to where we want to be. Pornography, substance addictions, and then just addictions to things like anger or aggression or that sort of stuff, like things that are in our, some of us are just wired that way. We've had a bad run and we get that way. And then we just say, well, this is how I am. This is how I am. And we can't say that. You just can't, you don't get to say that. You don't get to say, I'm just like this.
Jonathan, in one of our previous chats about changing our character, and we'll end on this, but there's the last one I really want to just fine-tune, because this is really Des and I's heart, and what we believe as Momentum is really helpful for men. So you mentioned 5 things that will help change our character. Be humble, be open to new ways. Number 2 is live out your principles and values. Number 3 is be intentional, which you've talked about. 4, practice self-discipline. And number 5, which I just want you to expand on for a tick, is be accountable and surround yourself with people who have high expectations. Open yourself up to accountability. Just speak into that space for men listening right now, because, the reality is when we do the journey on our own, we don't hold ourselves accountable. It's easy to cop out. It's easy to whatever. Talk about the accountability piece for men listening right now.
This goes to the genius of what you guys are doing with Momentum, right? And I know, Des, this is really on your heart. Like, the number of good men that have looked after me over the years has been extraordinary. It really is. Like, and I just talk about, you got to have a couple of places you can tell the truth. So I've got 2 or 3 really close male friends, like really close, 20, 30 years of friendship. And I think I mentioned this in our last discussion recently. We were sitting around a fire down the coast, the 3 of us, and it was one of the deepest conversations that I'd ever had. It was profound. And often you just need to get men in the right situation where they've got the time and the space to actually do that. I've had some amazing priests in my life that go way back to, I think, November 3rd, 1995 was when I'd say I really had a kind of sense of conversion. And that priest is now in his 70s, and he's had a huge impact around the world. And I was at an event on the weekend and I saw him, and I just went and spent some time with him. And I've had some really fantastic men.
Yeah, that's so key.
Because that's how we lived, right? For thousands of years, you grew up with a particular group of men. You never traveled more than about 10 miles from where you were born, and they just vanished. So accountability, I definitely have. I could pick up the phone and ring any number of about 5 people and tell them the truth. So if my marriage was in serious trouble or I was doing something stupid, I've got some places to go. So good. I think what Momentum's doing is so crucial, and the more that men can get around each other at the moment, the better.
It's very sound advice.
Can I just say that might be a little confronting for you to go, hey, you know what? I don't have anybody in my speed dial that I could reach out to. Can we encourage you to have a conversation with somebody in your life and start building that sort of friendship, or even reach out to Des and I at Momentum at the website, momentumaustralia.org. We can either help you out or maybe find you someone in your local area that you can maybe start that journey with, because having accountability, and we've talked about, but having people, most importantly, that can journey with you on your life is so crucial. And Jonathan, I just want to, again, thank you for what you've imparted there, but leaving us on that note and being vulnerable and honest about your own life, mate. We appreciate that. And then encouragement to the men listening. Yeah, that's the heart behind Momentum, is don't do life on your own. Find good men that you can have honest, real conversations with and do life with. So Jonathan Doyle, always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks for being a part of the show.
Love it, guys. Really appreciate it. And, just hope it's a blessing to people listening. Thanks for having me.
Thanks again to our special guest, Jonathan Doyle, and hopefully you gleaned something from this week's show. If you'd like to hear this episode again and previous episodes of Momentum, you can do that by checking out our website, momentumaustralia.org. Every show that we've done is there on the podcast button. You can click there and find all of the previous shows, other topics and tidbits as well, an opportunity for you to start a discussion, be involved in a discussion, find out some tips and advice from other guys around Australia, because we're all in this together. And look, if you would like to spare a few dollars to ensure that Momentum stays broadcasting right around Australia, We would really, really appreciate your support. Whatever that can be for you, you can donate online at momentumaustralia.org. Essentially, you're not just donating towards keeping Momentum on the air. What you are doing is sowing into men's lives all around Australia. As I mentioned before, 31 radio stations are taking the show. Vision FM are taking the show, which broadcasts nationwide. And of course, we are podcast all around the world and getting feedback from all around the world too. If you want to put in Momentum Australia into your favorite podcast platform, you'll be able to hear all of the previous episodes too. My thanks again to Jonathan Doyle, Des, of course, and to you listening. Look forward to seeing you next week and having another great discussion right here on Momentum.
You've been listening to Momentum, a show that helps men succeed in life. For more information or to hear this week's show again, go to momentumaustralia.org. You can also access a whole range of resources to help you on your journey and to get in touch with the team at momentumaustralia.org. Until next time, keep moving forward with Momentum.